Okay, I think we're back. I hope that this continues on. Let me turn home. Sorry, I'm not streaming on Facebook. I'm trying to fix this really quick, and I appreciate your patience as I work through this, and I really hope I still have the front part of the video. We shall see. Okay. It doesn't look like it looks like I'm losing everything again. So, okay, I'm losing everything again. I'm going to discontinue and try one last time. Well, it looks like I can do this without Facebook. Let me just turn off Facebook because it's just not working. And then I can continue on with LinkedIn. So I truly apologize if anybody's on today and catching this. I don't even know where it went out. So we're going to just go ahead and plunge in. So basically what we're going to talk about today is where you are been led more by fear of criticism than by your own self-confidence or Godfidence. And I'll share a little bit of my own story just so that you can see if you relate as well. There was a time in my career where I'd had a little bit of survivor's guilt. People I respected and viewed as capable, they ended up being let go. And yet I remained and got promoted into one of their places in the restructuring. And it took a while to get out of that fear and guilt and to restore my own self-confidence, because in that time frame where that first few months of it, I kept expecting that I was going to get the phone call next about that he'd made a mistake and he shouldn't have promoted me. I was an imposter. I wasn't as good as people thought, or that I needed to go and join everyone else that was often looking for another job. Once I was able to restore myself, my self-confidence and my Godfidence that I'll be talking about a little bit later, I was able to move on with my work and just lose so much of that stress and tension that was in the relationship with my boss in that time frame, and to perform at such a higher level as well because I was so less stressed. So I'm just curious then, so what's your story? I know that this can be sensitive. You don't have to put it into the chat. Everybody's got challenges in their work environment, and I don't want anybody to feel exposed by having to put this forward. So what I'm going to talk about today, though, it really is anchored in the assumption that you view yourself, at least to a small degree, as a beloved and precious child of God. And I get it. There's certain days maybe you're not 100% there, but at least most days, if you are. And I'm not going to talk about today if you're not there developing the spiritual maturity or anything for it. I'm not going to get into what do you believe about God? What does God believe about you? Or what do you believe about you? I'm going to leave that for a conversation between you and God or some of your spiritual advisors. Today, all I'm doing is talking about work and how integrating faith more into your workday can end up helping to relieve some of the tension that's in that relationship between you and your boss. So we're going to talk about two different points today. The first is when we forget about who's truly in charge of our life, we start trying to earn what's already ours. We're already loved. We're already approved of. So when you get caught up in the day-to-day, and it is so easy at work, I absolutely get it. Crazy busy schedules, long to-do lists, staying on top of everything. So as a top performer, there's a lot going on. And so sometimes what happens is we get into behavioral responses that are based upon prior experiences and behaviors, sometimes even from childhood. So as an example, there is a woman that I worked with. She realized that her boss reminded her of her dad and with certain mannerisms. And so she would find herself behaving the same way she did whenever she brought home a report card that wasn't straight A's. But how did she need to end up earning his respect and his being able to get in his good graces again, and trying to make it up for him, that because she hadn't had that strong performance. And that was really, once you'd had that aha, then we could start breaking it down and figuring out how to handle this differently. Or in another situation that I'd found, and maybe take it a little bit more personally. So there was one guy I worked with where he kept taking his boss incredibly personally. The smallest of things he took as a reflection of his own performance and how his boss viewed him and his worth and contribution to the organization. And it took a little bit of figuring out what the pattern was, but he finally realized that his boss ended up had like a Jekyll and Hyde thing. He turned really rude and obnoxious when he was under stress, and then he would just let it all out on everybody else. And so, yeah, there was a difference in the behavior, and it was inappropriate. And we just worked through and figured out what are some different ways to handle that appropriate from a professional environment, but then also for him personally, so he wasn't as caught up in all of those feelings as much. Because once you begin to recognize what's going on in your feelings or what's triggering you, then you're able to start fixing it. And if you're working from subconscious and you're just going back into old patterns, that's where you're going to see the over-explaining, the second-guessing, the overcompensating. So drop a quick yes in the chat or the comments if you've ever caught yourself doing any of these things. And not for clarity, but to avoid being misunderstood or for a greater sense of belonging. So it's that distinction between I'm doing this to deliver something with excellence versus I'm delivering this to be approved of and to be respected. And like I said, I'll catch up if you catch this on the replay later on, and get back to you with anything that you put in the comments. I really do appreciate it. So what I'm asking again is just put a quick yes in the chat or the comments if you've ever caught yourself doing any of these behaviors that I've just talked about. And so as you engaged in those behaviors, have you ever noticed what your feelings are when you're overcompensating, or you're second guessing or rewriting? What's that feeling that you have as you engage in that behavior? Or when you interact with your boss that comes up? Because this is that space that you can explore to end up understanding how it's coming up in your different coping responses, because it's the feeling that's driving the behavior subconsciously. And these coping behaviors, then they can have impact into other relationships or other areas of life. It's like if you're coming home every day and you're complaining about your boss, what does that do to your quality time with your family? You may feel better about venting about it, but then what about the other people? So this is what I mean. It can have some trickle out impact depending on what your coping response is. And so all of this emotional scramble for approval, it's often a misplaced allegiance. When you overly care about making the other person happy to the detriment of your self-confidence or your Godfidence. Any questions or comments before I move on to the next point? Drop it in the chat and let me know. Okay, like I said, catch it on replay, I'll find you. So moving on to point 2. Peace returns when you... There we go. Peace returns when you lead from whose you are, when you're not trying to impress. So if you think about what the message is, it's in 2 Corinthians 4, 8 through 9. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. God didn't call us to be passive and just to take it all, but he also didn't ask us to be crushed under the pressure of stress and tense work relationships. And so as Paul said to the Corinthians, this helps us to find that internal power shift where we're reclaiming our grounded presence through connection with God. And just when we shift into that posture and we take our weakness and with humility bring it to God, that's when you can step back into poise and clarity and just being fully centered and present, even when expectations are high and there's all sorts of crazy going on around you. And that's what I mean by Godfidence. It goes beyond self-confidence. When in your humility and in those moments of weakness, when you welcome God into the moment, and instead of trying to do it all on your own to work through the feelings, you can find strength in His love and support. So what shifts with you if you walk into your next interaction with your boss knowing that God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, they're all in your corner. They already approve and love you. So you can walk in with that feeling of security. What shifts for you with that? So you might be asking yourself, then how do I do this? I have a crazy busy day. Things are just like one after another, and I'm just constantly reacting. So just take a second, take a moment. It doesn't take very long. It just takes intention. Before opening that email from your boss that you're worried about, or going into that meeting, or taking that call, listening to that message, just take a quick breath, calm yourself down, and fall into prayer. Even something so simple as, God, I work with you for you first. Help me hold on to my Godfidence, even if this interaction feels like whatever that feeling is that we talked about a little bit earlier. This can help you to stay centered and calm and just connected with Him in that Godfidence, so that you can get through even tense and difficult interactions. So as you take a look at how you want to feel differently, what is it? What's one word to describe how you want to feel at work this week? Is it calm, clear, confident? And as you look at that word, do you see how just a brief moment of prayer and connection with God can help you even in the middle of your hectic workday? So I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping us up for today. God, I thank you that our identity and peace don't depend on how others perceive us. Remind us of whose we are and that we work for you first, that we are loved, known, and your precious children. Help us release the grip of needing to impress others and return to the strength that comes from being yours. Give us clarity when pressure builds and confidence wanes, that your voice speaks the loudest. In Jesus' name, amen. So give a moment just to let that settle. You've been performing and proving yourself for so long. But what if just for a moment, you just let go and rested in the truth that you've already been proven by grace? So if today's discussion has given you even one moment of clarity, imagine what 30 minutes could do. If you book a peace and focus starter session, we'll look at what's draining you, what's going on with that relationship with your boss, and help you to being able to reclaim your energy, your focus, your peace, and presence in your workday. We'll find you one strategy that you can apply that works specifically in your situation. And if today's message stirred something for you, just put the word peace in the comments, and I'll send you the information so that you can schedule a time when we can get deeper into your situation so you can connect with the truth of who you are. You don't have to stay stuck in this pattern of feeling the need to constantly prove yourself. God's got more with you, and He will walk you through with this shift. And just a final question to ask yourself. Are you proving or proven? Which one are you leading from today? Next week, I'll be talking more about showing up with confidence, even when tension with your boss triggers self-doubt or overreaction. We're going to talk a lot more about this boss relationship in the next few weeks. So until next time,